The first session, we actually have too much material, by the way, so we went long, so we'll try to speed it up. We'll just work it out. It worked out last time. We had a lot of fun this morning, so hopefully we'll have some fun this afternoon, even though I had way too much for lunch. We'll start out, let me introduce some of the folks that actually do all the work in my office. And we'll start on the left is Robert Ross. Raise your hand, Robert.
It's me, not this guy.
Robbie's been with the office 30 years.
Wow.
And he's done everything in the office. And he's the dean of the Lake County Property Appraiser's office. And currently he's in charge of our tangible personal property division, and he's our IT guy. And then we have Peter Peoples in charge of our field appraisers. We have 14 of those. Peter's only been with us 25 years. And then one of the new guys who came in with me is Michael Prestridge. Michael is my chief deputy, and he was also the Orange County Property Appraiser's chief deputy. So now, but we're lucky to have him. He's incredibly talented, making great things happen in this office every day. And this is Michael Prestridge, and he's now a resident of Lake County. So here. Just to go over some of the things that you got to turn this on first, don't you? Like on.
Clap on.
Now the battery. Now this is just getting worse.
IT.
It's not an IT problem. I take it out.
User error. He said it wasn't an IT problem.
I mentioned Michael was just here temporarily. Anyway, just so you know, I'm having a blast being property appraiser. And it's a lot of fun. And we're doing a lot of great things. And real stuff, like our changes are like real. They're like beneficial and helpful to you and the citizens. And hopefully we'll be able to show some of that you'll be able to use to do your job better and make you more money and help your customers and clients. And so it's all a big win for everybody. Today we're going to go over the role of the property appraiser and what's new in the property appraiser's office and just some of what's going on in the county and city, evaluations and current trends of all those institutional investors. We have some information about what's going on here in Lake County. The various property tax amendments that are somewhat difficult to administer, but we'd like to go over that with you. How we come up with values, and the values that you'll generally see on our website, and why does our market value differ from yours? What's the difference? We'll tell you why. And the various homestead exemptions and how they work, and portability. That's pretty important to some of your clients that are moving in. And the trim notice, the truth and millage, that just went out yesterday. And they're being uploaded on the website as we speak. So if you go to your property or someone else's, you'll be able to hit probably by tomorrow the current trim notice. And the website, all the changes we're making to the website, including the Excel download of all sales for 2012 and 2013. And then just sort of what else we have going. And we'll also be answering questions as we go. So as soon as we sort of finish a segment, we'll take some questions that are current to that segment. All right. Role of the property appraiser. Have you heard the term constitutional officer? In the Florida Constitution, it says that every county shall have a property appraiser, a sheriff, and a supervisor election, clerk of the court. So, because it's in the Constitution, they call me a constitutional officer. How about that, huh? And here it is again. What's important about this? The Constitution tells me what my job is. It says the place of just. When you see the term just in our world, that means market value. So to place a market value and a fair means that we treat everybody the same. Assess value on all real and tangible personal property. Your tangible stuff is generally businesses and business equipment. And then administer all the tax exemptions that are authorized by formal law. and prepare a tax roll. You know, that the dollar figure that we put on all 171,000 parcels is what all the cities and counties and taxing authorities apply their millage to. So they have to have a squared away tax roll every July 1st. And then we also have a huge responsibility of making sure every piece of property is annotated and marked by ownership, and so that it's 100% accurate here in Lake County. And just as an aside, in America in particular, and other successful capitalistic nations, there's a commonality between successful nations, and that is they all have a strong, robust system of property rights and property ownership. A lot of other countries where capitalism fails, one reason it fails is because nobody knows who owns what. And so maybe you own a piece of property, maybe someone else has a claim on it. None of it's been sorted out. You can't hardly borrow money in a lot of countries because you can't prove that you own the land. Now people are using it, they're building buildings, they're building houses, but there's no clear title. And so I like to say I'm contributing to democracy here in America. All right, here's a good one. And because I'm an independent, because the folks elect me separate from the taxing authorities, my job is not let them influence how I appraise properties. My job is not to raise taxes or lower taxes or anything. My job is, as the Constitution says, to put a fair market value on all 171,000 parcels and to do it in a fair and equitable manner, and not be influenced by whether some government needs money or doesn't need money. Just a few important things to note is that we put values, the value that we put on all 171,000 parcels is as of January 1st. So we put, you know, it's not values as they change during the year, it's basically what is that property worth on January 1st of every year. And then best estimate to the counties and cities, that's just giving them a heads up of what the tax roll is going to look like a month later. We submit the official certified tax roll. Department of Revenue oversees, they sort of overlook my office and all other property appraisers' office to assure across the state we're all doing it in a similar, fair manner. We produce a trim, truth and millage, that shows proposed taxes, what they were last year, so folks will know, they'll have an idea what their city or county is about to do to them, or do for them. And then, of course, cities and counties have budget hearings, and also part of my job is to, especially now those trims are coming out, you know, folks are going to let me know if I've not done such a good job on their property. And so we work really hard to listen to folks if there's a disagreement. Because there's times, we know for a fact, we don't have all the information. Right. And a property owner might, and so when they come to us, you know, our assumption at our office is not, well, we're right, you're wrong. Our assumption is, well, you know, maybe we missed something. Well, what do you have? How can you help me, you know, relook at this? And so we're very aggressive in doing that. And then there are times when we just agree to disagree, and folks have a right to go to the Value Adjustment Board, and we are trying to be as helpful. We give them all the information. Here, you want to appeal, here's the paperwork, how can we help you? So we're bending over backwards trying to make sure property owners are treated fairly in Lake County. And what's new at the property appraiser's office, we used to have when I first got in, we had a gentleman who was retiring, and he was drawing the property lines with a hammer and chisel on a piece of stone. Actually, it was a piece of paper and pencil, but the fact is, like, no one else does that anymore. It's all drawn on computers. Well, bless this guy's heart, he was drawing pencil and paper, and then we turn around, walking across the street to the county, where they redrew it on the computer. Well, anyway, he retired, because he was old as Moses. That's where he learned that chisel and hammer stuff on stone. And the county has agreed to send me their 3 mappers, computer mapper folks. They're coming to my office, because they're really doing property appraiser work anyway. So the county just approved that. They sent one to me just as a temporary transition 6 months ago, and already we were able to, we found a lot of errors, corrected a lot of errors, and it was because just communication. nobody's doing anything wrong, they just weren't in the office and we weren't talking to each other. So we fixed that. Automatic renewal, senior exemptions, veterans, and agriculture. Before, all these folks had to send in a brand new application every year. And what that meant was, this poor little 85-year-old woman who's getting a low-income exemption had to send me her tax forms and everything else to show that she didn't get a second or third job and increase her income. It's like, okay, these seniors are not out getting, they're not, you know, some are making $8,000 a year of Social Security. They're not, and they're 85, and they're not getting another job. We're just going to automatic renew them until they die. So that's, and saving a lot of time, saves us time, saves them time, it's good for everybody. Agriculture, we're going to do the same thing, auto renewal, and then we're going to have, instead of my guys spending all this time processing applications, now we're going to have an audit program where they can actually get out there more and make sure there's bona fide operations. So, well, if you're legit, you're legit. And I'm a pro, let me tell you, I'm a pro agriculture guy.
Right.
If you can even be a hobbyist, meaning if you have a part-time agriculture business, it's part-time, that's still agriculture. But you have to be literally engaged in the business. You got to be selling some stuff. You're just growing roses, claiming it, you know, you're in the rose business. Well, you better show me some receipts where you sold a rose. You know? So, but I don't expect too much problem. But so Robbie does our IT stuff besides the TPP, and before we had the Microsoft Office 2003 is what we're using. Well, now at least up to 2010. Woo! So that's one of the changes we made. We're saving a lot of money. $5,000 on we were sending out certified mail that wasn't required, wasn't necessary. We did away with that. Saved $5,000. Saved $9,000 on trim notices to folks that had a zero tax bill. So we were sending them this to tell them that they weren't paying taxes. It was unnecessary. There's a day program that helps us. It's a Department of Highway and Safety. They have a big, it's a driver's license database, really. A lot of useful information that we use. Particularly, folks always send us applications that are incomplete, and then we mail them back, and they mail them back, and we mail them back, and it's, now we're just going to look up the stuff for them on the day program and fill out their application for them and process it, instead of all this back and forth stuff. And the day program is a pretty sensitive program. We had to really promise them a lot of things to get this. Luckily, I was the chairman of the Transportation Committee in Florida Senate, so I got a good relationship with the DOT secretary, and so he's been very helpful. And then we're trying to get all the taxing, all the cities, counties on e-trim, electronic filing through our office. We're buying new plotters to plot our own maps, dual monitors to do inspections. We have a requirement. We have to, those 171,000 parcels, we're supposed, within a 5-year period, we're supposed to put eyes on every one of them. Well, we really haven't been doing that. So we're going to use a little technology. We're using the high definition photographs. We're going to put up those dual monitors, and we're going to just start knocking out. The law allows, I was a sponsor, the law allows that if you have a good photograph of that property, that will constitute a physical inspection. So now we can have people trained and just knock out parcel after parcel, and we'll meet that requirement that we've only been pretending to meet in the past. So I have one commercial appraiser. My office does every commercial business in Lake County and does an outstanding job. Just got on, he just went through an audit with a DOR. I mean, he knocked it out of the ballpark, but poor guy, I'm just burning him out. So we're adding, not only are we adding a new commercial appraiser, but we're giving them some commercial appraisal subscriptions, give him a little more information so he doesn't have to do a lot of legwork to make it more efficient. And then we're going to put GPS tracking on all our vehicles for our field inspections. And that's not to check on them to see if they're going down to the Peterson gun shop. You know, not that that's a bad thing. Matter of fact, for you, we're available for all your hunting and shooting needs. My family owns a Peterson. But what we can do, as my field appraisers, as this cool little thing, which didn't cost much money and doesn't have any recurring costs, it shows on a map where they're driving, and it all lights up. And anyway, we can take a county map, and it actually will fill in as they inspect. It actually slowly fills in the county and gives me a visual guide. Hey, how is our coverage, our appraisal coverage of the county? And I'll be able to look at this and be able to tell. And we also hope to glean some efficiencies. Well, doesn't it look like maybe we ought to switch the territories because he can't get here and he can't get there. So it's just a good tool. It didn't cost a lot of money, and we think it's going to be incredibly effective. Investing in our talent. Our talent is the folks that work for me, 39 employees. And to give you a little example of how we do a lot with a little, I looked at 6 other counties that are similar size to Lake County, like Marion County. It's actually a little bigger. I looked at St. Lucie, Osceola, a little smaller. So I looked at 6 similar. We had 39 employees. Two of the other counties, one had 54, one had 56 employees. Another 2 had 60. Now doing the same job, but we're doing 39. Another 2 had 70.
Oh my God.
So on average office, property appraiser office, similar size, has 60 employees. We're doing the same job with 39. And that's okay. But you got to give folks the tools. You're only going to have 39 employees. You got to give them the technology. So we're giving them the technology. We're focusing on listening to them. I started a staff advisory council that meets with me every quarter, and they give me a whole wish. I say, tell me what you got. What do you want? What do you want? Of course, the field appraisers in the peace department, they want a pool table. And I said, well, I'll put it down, but yeah, you're probably not going to get that approved. But one of his guys said, the hand truck always has, the wheels are always flat. We're always having to pump up the wheels. So we put solid wheels on the hand truck. And that guy's happy. And we had some rules about no food at the desk. We did away with that. We had rules about no radios in the office. We did away with that. Anyway, so I'm getting all this information, and plus stuff that's actually more work-related, getting all these suggestions, and we're acting on what we can act, and really empowering the staff. They're all smart, talented folks, professional workers in the Lake County Property Appraiser's office. They want to do their job. Part of my job, I tell them, is to try to keep out of the way and let them do their job. So we're doing it. They're the talent. I'm just sort of the entertainment department in the Lake County Property Appraiser. But they're wonderful folks, and we've seen a real big change in morale and efficiencies just because we're listening to them. Education, we're spending a lot more money on education. When I arrived, the field appraisers, only 4 out of the 14 was certified. We're now up to 6. By next year, we'll have 8. So that's doubled in a year. My goal in the next couple of years is to have every one of them certified, the field appraisers. And that same appraisal certification, I actually want the entire office to go through, so that everybody understands that they're a little part of the pie, how it all fits in, and to make sure that people have opportunities to progress within the office. So everybody will have good training, so there won't be an unqualified person in our office. Whether they're working the front counter or in the back, they're all going to be certified folks. And we also field a lot of phone calls, and it's great to have just, when you pick, so it doesn't matter who answers the phone in the Lake County Property Appraiser's office, there's going to be a sharp individual that knows the answer. Okay, county and city valuations, this is sort of interesting. For 5 years in a row, we've had declining, 5 years in a row, we've had declining home values. So this is the first year, woo, look here, the general fund is the county fund. So that's county property, and we're actually almost up 0.5%, which is a whole lot better than going down. And then you can see the number of cities that had total increases in taxable value, and then the number of cities that had a total decrease. Very interesting, huh? This is just a graph, as you know, here's the peak in 07, 5-year decline, and then this year finally a little uptick.
Is this of January 1st?
This is as of January 1st. So that uptick is really the values that occurred, increases that occurred last year. And now here, this is really important, just from a big economic point. New construction. If it wasn't for new construction, we would have seen a decrease in taxable value in Lake County and most of the cities. It was a new construction that sort of pushed us over the top, and which is good. So once again, the county, so $154 million of new construction, $140 million is residential, $14 million was commercial. So we probably, quite frankly, need more commercial, but hey, we'll take what we can get. And you can see some of the percentages of increases. Look at Asatula. Almost 500% increase. Woo! Way to go, Asatula. So, and then if I hit the right, okay, here's housing. So this is your housing market. So we have all these, and that just not commercial, but just residential went up. Rowan saw a big increase. And then here's the cities that went down. And you'll see in any one year in real estate, I mean, as you know, Lake County's not all the same. You got values going up here, maybe going down here, maybe staying the same. So it's all a matter of averages. But that's all interesting to note. And then here's just vacant land. And you can see the ones that went up. Claremont, as you can imagine, Claremont's leading the county and everything like in the past. But on average, it's, a vacant land, a lot of times developers will drive that sale too. We hadn't had a lot of big developers go and buy land, so. And this is very interesting, the tangible personal property, that's the business equipment. See that in red? That's not good. $77 million loss. What that means to me is we tax and assess business equipment. Under normal good economic times, businesses are reinvesting, always. So it keeps the numbers up. As soon as they just hunker down and keep what they have, depreciation of business equipment occurs, and you get a loss of value. So you can see some of the cities where the businesses are not reinvesting, and their equipment that's on the books is depreciating. And so, but once again, Asatula pulls it off here. Woo, look here. Now, and since Asatula's coming up here, I have a little riddle for you. We see Asatula's look here. It's the only city to not have a loss of tangible personal property. So here's the riddle. The riddle is, when is $1 worth more than $1? The answer is when it's a dollar store. It's a dollar store that turned Asatula around. $1 store. Now Eustis, they're putting a dollar store. That's where I live. Every other corner town. But Asatula, $1 store did wonders for that little city. So I can tell you, they're probably big fans. And I forgot where I started, where you end. Where are we? Amendments? Are you getting the amendment? Okay, I've spoken enough for now. I'll be back. So now you get Michael.
All right, afternoon. A little later in the program here, we go through a whole list of amendments. But there was one thing that took place in 2012 called Amendment 2 that expanded the combat wounded veterans exemption. And last year, you see down at the bottom in yellow, there was $89,000 in exempt value. This year, because they expanded this exemption, it jumped up to almost $12 million that was exempted on the tax roll. We had a lot of veterans applying for this exemption this year. A few other stats that you may find interesting, given that you are a big driver of this, with all your sales going on out there. 2011 total sales or total transfers. Our office tracks every transfer, whether it's a quitclaim deed, a certificate of title, a warranty deed, special warranty. It doesn't matter. We get them all, track them all. So there were a little over 17,000 last year, 17,007. This year to date, 10,456. Not sure we'll quite hit that 17 number this year. I don't know. We'll see. Now, of all of those transfers, we've whittled through those, and through the guidelines that the Department of Revenue sets forth for us to go through those, examine the sales, verify them, qualify them. In 2011, there were 3,800 qualified sales, and in 2012 it went up. So we saw more qualified sales last year. Now remember, in developing a tax roll, one thing that's a little different is we're looking in arrears. To develop the 2013 tax roll, and as Mr. Baker said, place a fair, just value on that property as of January 1, that means we are looking at sales that occurred in the market back in 2012. Because we're most of the time looking at that last fourth quarter to get as close to a January 1 value as possible. Certificates of title, you know, a little indicator as to what's happening there with the foreclosures. They have been going down. So far this year, though, we still have a little over 1,100, which accounts for about 11% of all the transfers so far to date. A few other stats. You know, there's two different types of caps, assessment caps or assessment limitations. There's the homestead cap, which is a 3% cap on the increase in assessed value of your homestead properties. And then there's the non-homestead cap, which is a 10% cap on any other property that is not homesteaded. So this year, you see that number grew from 1,700 properties to 3,471, and the value of the amount of value that's capped and not being assessed on the tax roll, doesn't get taxed to the property owner, grew from 17.6 million to 36.7. So that's an indicator to us that we were raising, on the tax roll and doing our analysis of sales, we were increasing the market value of quite a few of these different property types for that amount to get capped. Under the Save Our Homes or 3% cap on all the residential homesteaded properties, that number grew also from 13,006 to a little over 20,000. And the amount of value there that's being capped grew from 264 million to 316 million. Now, 316 million. That's right here, that last little bar, right down there. Okay, so this shows you that the life of the Save Our Homes cap started back in 1994, effective on the tax roll, I think first year in 95. And as the market value increased, the amount of value that was protected and not being taxed grew to 3.35 billion. Then as the market decreased, that evaporated. People used to call and say, you took my cap away, or you took my portability away. No, the market did, because the market went, that value goes along with it. But it upticked this year just slightly. So that's an indicator that these property types, homestead property types, are increasing in value. This is kind of interesting, just the history of the number of homesteaded properties. In 2010, or actually 2009, I'm sorry, we hit a high of 79,451 homes that were being homesteaded and receiving the homestead exemption. Now that's decreased to 76,688, so it's about a 3.5% decrease. So those are former homeowners that were homesteaded who have either left or now become renters. This is tracking the improved residential sales that we track in the office. So there was a high back at the height of the market, 2005. We had 15,385 residential sales that we processed. Then that dropped down to a low in 2008 of 5,633. And last year, back up to 7,705. So far this year, we've processed just a little over 4,600 improved residential sales. Now, a lot of these charts, we're talking about height of the market. And I always get a chuckle when I'm reading an article in the newspaper or something, or online if I'm looking at Realty Track, or you know, whatever it is. Everybody wants to point to the height of the market. Mary Shanklin with the Orlando Sentinel, bless her heart, and I know her quite well. You know, she does this notoriously in her articles, if you see those in the Sentinel, always comparing back to the height of the market. And everybody knows, you know, you guys know, there were parts of that were artificial. But governments want to do that too. You know, taxing authorities are oftentimes saying, well, when are we going to get back? Because, you know, they're wanting that revenue stream. You know, that so much of that revenue stream has disappeared. So I thought it'd kind of be interesting to show, okay, in terms of the tax roll, what would it take to get back to the peak of where the tax roll was at? So we're back to that chart that we had a moment ago showing here the peak of that tax roll was $22.4 billion in taxable value. That's the total tax roll, real property, tangible personal property, and centrally assessed property that's assessed by the DOR in Tallahassee. And then it went down and now it's back up to 14.7. All right, but look down here, these numbers which you can't read. The top row is 3%, 5%, 7%, 10%. So, you know, you just run those numbers out in a spreadsheet and say, okay, if we had solid 3% growth, how many years would it take to get back to here? 15 years. If you had solid 5% growth, it'd take 9, 7% at 7, and solid 10% growth would still take 5 years to get back to the peak. Yeah, that's 10% growth, that's not going to happen. No. You know, it's just not. So, you know, cities have, you know, taxing authorities have all these other fixed costs and other costs that are increasing and everything. And, you know, they have certain control over spending, but, you know, it's kind of one of those bubbles that sometimes are balloons that, you know, hate to burst that balloon, but that's, you know, yeah, that's going to be tough to hit.
It's a nice chart.
Thank you. Okay, one thing in today's session, there's a trend going on that I'm sure you all are aware of the institutional investors that are buying up properties. And if you didn't see this, in Florida Trend Magazine, the February issue, they did a big article on it. It's a great article. I recommend looking it up online. And they talk about how this trend has sort of started, where it started, which is basically Orange County, California, which, if you remember, a lot of the mortgage problems seem to have originated out of Orange County, California. And they talk about how this is the first time this has happened with large private equity funds, hedge funds, and everything. They never invested in residential real estate before because typically when properties went up for sale, it was a house here, it was a house there, yonder, etc. But now so many properties come up in areas that are geographically clustered that, and the federal government now said, oh, okay, you can bundle these properties and sell them. So they're able to buy properties in bulk in geographic clusters and say, okay, well, we'll buy these from Chase, or we'll buy these from Fannie Mae, or these from HUD over in Orlando, and these up in Lake County, and this, that, and the other. And then they farm out the management of it to private management companies to go in, fix them up, rent them, because they can get such a huge return on them right now as rental properties. And then their strategy is about 5 to 7 years down the road, start releasing them back on the market. So we were kind of going, okay, well, you know, if this is happening, to what extent is it happening here in Lake County, and how's it affecting things? And this is one of the marketing pieces of material from the association here. Your 4-year chart that shows 4 years ago your inventory was at over 5,000 and now at 2,600, 5.3 month supply. I'm sure a certain portion of that's kind of, you know, the bottom of the barrel type of properties, and then there's the good properties and the ones that are actually moving and selling, but it's really low. And how is the institutional buyers buying properties and pulling them off the market that never, you know, go into your hands to market and sell? How's that affecting things? So I went to this new, let me pull this up here. A little later on, I'm going to show you on our website, we've got a sales file, an Excel sales file. So I went to that file for 2013, and I stripped through the file and pulled out just the institutional investors and the banks. And so as I scroll through this, I want you to remember, these are homes that have sold in Lake County to institutional investors since January 1 of this year.
Outside of the realtor field, or are they involved with realtor?
I suspect outside, because they're buying most of these in bulk.
That's just this year.
THR Florida LP is a big one, although they're actually out of Texas. So 433 that I've identified just to the major institutional investors. That's not even little small local investors and everything else. And then when it comes to the banks, let me scroll here. Scroll too fast. Okay. We got quite a few that have also gone back to the banks this year as well. Deutsche Bank, Fannie Mae, Fannie Mae, Fannie Mae. By the way, when we look at the top 5 taxpayers of real property in the county, Fannie Mae is the number 3 taxpayer in the county. So, there's
foreclosures? Those are basically foreclosures?
yes, sir.
How many were there? Oh, really?
Well, like I said earlier, we've processed a little over 1,100 certificates of title so far. And when I look at this file, I think this particular file's about 500 or so that I've pulled just from banks. Okay. In a moment, I'm going to turn things over to Peter to talk about values, 3 different values, etc. But before we do so, there's one thing that drives a lot of the valuation process in our office, and that's all of the amendments that have occurred. So put this together to sort of look at the amendments through the years. And the big one that, hopefully you're aware of, Save Our Homes Amendment came into play in 1992, took effect on the tax roll in 94. This placed a 3% assessment cap on the assessed value of homesteaded properties. So it can't increase any more than 3% or the percent change in the consumer price index. Now remember, that's the assessed value. Okay? 2008 was a big year. There were 4 things that took place. We said, okay, we've got this Save Our Homes assessment cap. And so the market value of people's property may have risen. The assessed value barely ticked up because it's capped at 3%, remember? So you got this big spread here. That spread is the amount of value that's being protected by Save Our Homes. So that's your Save Our Homes benefit or Save Our Homes capped amount. That's the amount that people say, well, we want to be able to take that savings with us when I move over here to Lake County or I move over to the beach or whatever. So there was the concept of portability that came about so that you could port your savings over to another property. So that was part of everything in 2008. Then there was also the additional homestead exemption that came about. We're going to talk more about this in a little bit. This was an additional $25,000, or was it? We'll get there. There was the non-homestead 10% assessment cap. So if it was any piece of property out there, whether it's vacant land, commercial, duplexes, it doesn't matter, anything that did not have a homestead exemption on it now became capped at a max of 10% per year. And then there was also a $25,000 tangible personal property exemption. So they gave tangible personal property, that business equipment and everything, same sort of exemptions that homestead property was receiving. To give.
And that little exemption there knocked out like 80% of all small businesses from having to pay anything.
Right.
Do you have to apply for that?
Your return, the return acted as the application, basically. They have to file a return every year, a tax return with us. So that basically acted as the application. But our TPP guy back here sprang to life.
With the tangible personal property, to get the exemption, you file the first year, and if you're under the 25, it's an automatic renewal. We do send a postcard to you requesting that if you add any equipment, to please notify us so that we can keep that up to date. But once you've applied, by filing your tangible return with us by the April 1st deadline, you're going to get the exemption, and as long as you're under the 25, you'll be exempt from taxation.
If you don't file, you're not
And if
exempt.
you don't file, then we have to come up with a value for you, and you won't like that.
I have missed that.
It's meant for small businesses, mom and pop businesses. You know, you're a small business, you're a nail salon. You know, by the time you report your equipment, it's depreciated out. Most of it's under $25,000, so you become exempt.
And it brought in almost no taxes. Matter of fact, they did the numbers. It costs small businesses more money to comply with the requirement than government collected.
Right.
These were $10, $20, $30 tax bills for all this paperwork. It was insane. So this was a great amendment for just taking care of all the small businesses. So you guys actually voted for it.
Then, 2010, we had an amendment for deployed military, and this was for military that were deployed overseas in support of very specific operations. The statutes list out the operations. You know, I don't remember all the names. So the one coming to mind at the moment is an old one, Desert Storm, but that's an old one.
It's the wars, Iraq, Afghanistan wars.
And that's based on the number of calendar days that they were deployed in the previous year and such. But then last year, 2012, we had three more. We had Amendment 2 that changed the residency requirements for combat wounded, where you no longer had to be a Florida resident at the time you entered into the military service. Amendment 9 was an exemption for first responders or their spouses, those who were killed in the line of duty. And Amendment 11, which was an additional senior exemption for those who already qualified for senior exemption, 65 or older with limited income. There's an income limitation amount. But if you were in your house for 25 years or more, then and the value of the house is less than $250,000, then there's an exemption, a very, very nice exemption on that.
What is the exemption?
It is basically an exemption equal to the assessed value amount. So for most taxing authorities, except for the school board, it pretty much wipes out your tax bill. So,
25 years.
but you also have to meet the income limitation
Someone's done that
on
for
that.
25 years.
Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Peter here.
Are there any questions on? No?
I would assume that 25-year residency is not portable if they move later.
No.
Good question.
Is there no, it's not portable. You gotta be living there 25 years.
Same house. It only applies to the same house.
Right, I think it is only on the same property.
So people will apply now for next year.
On the
If
portability,
that's someone that was eligible.
is the value above the cap to the market value, is that what the portability is?
Absolutely.
Yes, and we're going to do a whole section on portability in a minute.
Okay, because I do that.
So
Okay,
we'll get to exactly how that works when you're upsizing or downsizing.
okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you gonna cover a whole section about who can homestead exempt?
That's not in today's agenda, but if you have a specific question, you
I have a specific question.
hit me up afterwards,
Oh, okay, all right,
because we're going to be tight on time here.
okay.
No, go ahead.
Hello, everybody. I actually am in charge of all the real estate, agricultural, and commercial assessments that come through our office, that our office produces. We look at all these properties. We do only have 13 employees at the time. 12 of them are in the field, actually doing the appraisals. One of those is actually our commercial appraiser for right now. And we show, when everybody looks at things, why are there three values that we show? Market value, as we also call it, the just value, the assessed value, and taxable value. The only value that we ever change in our office is market value. We don't change the other ones. They're all adjusted by other means. The market value is the most probable sale price the property would sell for in a competitive market. Knowing the willing buyer, willing seller, both knowledgeable of the market. The issue, difference between that value and an appraisal value that you might get from appraisers, we also have to take in consideration in the sale, the cost of the sale. So the assessed value of the property is going to be the market value of the property, less any type of things like agricultural classification, 3%, 10% cap, limitations, and that's going to affect the market value and reduce it down to the assessed value. Something to remember, the first year of the sale price, the first year that somebody buys the property, if they buy the property this year, they're going to start off at the base come next January. So to remember that they do not get the same tax bill they got the year they bought it. So if they bought it and the person had seniors and had homestead exemption, had all these other things, that's their tax bill this year because it runs out on December, at the end of December. January 1st, they must start with a clean slate. And their assessed value and market value will be the same. Taxable value is going to be the assessed value minus any exemptions that they qualify for. And I have here that it could be 4 different taxable values. And the reason is that the exemptions don't apply to all the millage rates. For example, schools protected from some of the seniors' exemptions. And then the question comes up, why does our appraised or our assessed value differ from some of the appraisals that you see? And some of those, just in some of the considerations, is how much did they get to see of the house? You're looking at comparing one subject property to 3 comparables. Their time frame is also different than ours. So it goes to the myth of should assessed value be equated with the market value, and it's not always true that you can do that. So based on our assessed value that we have to produce, our values are based, as they've already said, by statutory, the lien date is January 1st. So we appraise property based on January 1st. All the values that we're attributing to come up with that value is from the year prior to January 1st. And again, that was said in the 4th quarter. We try to study that because that's the closest time frame to the end of the year. We're required to review the prior year sales to place the fair and equitable market value on the property for ad valorem assessments. Ad valorem assessments, the wording ad valorem, is based on value. Tax is based on value. You're going to have a non-ad valorem tax and an ad valorem tax. Ad valorem tax is based on your millage rate multiplied by your assessed value equals your taxes for ad valorem. Non-ad valorem you're going to see on tax bills is fire, solid waste, simple flat fee taxes that the county uses for taxing authorities. We appraise en masse. That's the other difference between us and an appraisal is we're not looking at one particular subject. You're going to get bulked into the mass appraisal process of comparable homes that have sold and looking at the value that attributes to your assessment. So you're going to be comparing in that larger scale than what we had before as far as what a fee appraiser would do. And like I said, we look at the 4th quarter sales of looking at the values that are closest to January 1st. If you purchased the property, let's say in April of this year or even just last month, you get the trim notice this week, you compare that and you say, well, I just bought my house for $40,000 less, or why is it not matching what I just paid for it? I want you to adjust it. I can't even look at it. Your sale price was after January 1st. It's going to affect next year's value. So a lot of misunderstanding about that is that they want their value because they just paid for it. My value is going to be a year old by the end of the year here. Your bill comes out in the rear, so you get 11 months difference from the time of my assessment by the time you get your tax bill. When we also look at the sales, we have to take into consideration the statute of the 8th criteria, and one of those is the cost of the sale. Somebody always asks, well, what is the ratio of my assessed value or my market value to the actual market? And you've all heard the 85% and so forth. It is. Technically, if it was in a good world, everything's being the same, and the values and the sales working out, it's about 15% for the cost of sale. That's what's considered. However, the difference could be if you've got a really good deal on the sale and somebody who paid a lot more for the sale, their ratios are going to be different than those that are sitting in the median of the common sales that we are occurring. Portability was also mentioned a lot here. These lines dictate this. The red line that you see on this chart is your assessment from when you buy the property, and this is something very important for everybody here to remember. What I was saying is a buyer today would get the tax bill this year based on the previous owner's benefits. So January 1st next year, they're going to be on year one. Assessed value and market values are the same. As the market value increases, that's the only value we change. Remember, we're reflecting that market value based on what's happening in the market. Their assessed value is limited by the caps. Whether it be at 10% or 3%, in this case we're talking 3%, that carries over. Now when that gets separate, the money difference, as was explained, is the portability amount. So if you have $100,000, it goes up to $115,000 next year, you turn around and you've got a 3% cap on it, you're only going to see $103,000 on your assessed value. The rest is in the market value, and the difference between that is your capped amount that you don't pay taxes on, and that's portable. So remember to everybody that the new owner that you sell the house to, they're not going to get the same tax bill the previous owners had. And that's on a recapture. So that's why also the comment was made once before, is that why does my tax bill keep going up when my assessed value is coming down? Well, that's because there's money in there. And that has a trickling effect. It comes out onto your assessed value at least 3% a year. So your value is coming down, but you're going to come up until they meet again. That means there's zero. We didn't take away your cap or your portability. That's because there's zero. It dissolved in the market, so it was taken away by that. And Michael had mentioned that earlier. Physical inspections versus assessment frequency. Your appraisals that you're seeing are within a 3-month period or so forth that they're doing. Physical inspection for us, at least once every 5 years, we need to take a look at the property, and that was mentioned on there. Properties, permits that may cause us to go out there sooner than the 5 years. You pull a permit to do something, we're coming out there. The property sells, we're coming out there. There's other issues that will cause us to go there sooner than 5 years. But every 5 years, we're supposed to be looking at all the property in Lake County within that time frame, rotating, because you can't do all the county in 1 year. The frequency of the annual assessments involved in the property appraiser's office values, they adjust on the inspections and reassessments in light of sales and other activities that take place affecting the value. One of the things that he also mentioned that doesn't affect the caps is if somebody owns a property, they got their assessment limitations and everything's going good, but they added a pool. The pool gets added at market value that year, the year after it was added. If it was added last year, it's going on this year's tax roll. After that, it becomes part of the whole value, and if the market increases on their property next year, it's still part of the value, the assessed value. So it gets added the first time as market value beyond the cap, and after that, it's part of the total assessed value. 3 approaches to value that we have to look at. We have to look at this, and we have to consider it. And it's part of the statute. Market value, cost, and income. Market value being typical market indicating by what the real estate is doing. Cost is the cost, replacement cost of a piece of property, less depreciation. Income is always usually derived in a commercial property. Anything's going to do with income-derived rental units, things that they're going to make income on. Kmart stores, things like that can also be done on a Kmart, on a income-based process as well. Okay. Any questions?
You better ask a question.
Sorry about that.
Divine intervention.